Hello everyone, a very good afternoon. I hope all my students are here. Hi Rahul, good afternoon everyone. I hope I'm visible and audible. I'll just check. Yeah. I am excellent. All right, just a second. So everyone can see me and hear me. Hi Meetu, good afternoon everyone. Hi Saurav, good afternoon. Hi Kashyap, good afternoon. Hi Shweta, good afternoon. Okay, so all my students are coming in. Hi Deepa, good afternoon. Good afternoon Parminder, good afternoon Jyotsna. Hello everyone. So nice to see all of you here. Okay, I'll just wait for 30 seconds, let all students join in, and then we'll begin with our class, okay? Okay, great. Yes, I am visible and audible. Thank you for informing that. So I'll just begin in 30 seconds, okay? So I hope you all are doing good, and I hope preparation अच्छी चल रही है. Hi Kinjal, good afternoon. So today's class is we are taking on prose, okay, the prose of the Romantic period. We know Coleridge ne Biographia Literaria, very very important, and then there was Thomas D. Quincy ka work tha, that was, he's talked about opium. Then there's Knock on Macbeth Gate, and so many prose that were written. Charles Lamb essay on Elia. So we'll be discussing all, a very important class. इससे question ज़रूर आते हैं, Biographia Literaria से तो ज़रूर आते हैं question. So please be there, inform your friends also if you want. Okay, hi Pooja, good afternoon. Hi Shivani, hi Samir, good afternoon everyone. All right, so let's go ahead with the class. Hello everyone, a very good afternoon again, and I welcome all of you to India's largest learning platform, that's Unacademy, the perfect study partner for NTA UGC NET. And I am Dr. Anamta Rizvi, your educator for NET English Literature. I did my PhD from the Department of English, Shami Millah Islamia, New Delhi. I qualified my JRF, and now I am here with you guys. Okay, so paper 1, please focus, as I always say. वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट सब्जेक्ट, बहुत ही ज़्यादा फोकस करना, क्योंकि इससे मार्क्स काफ़ी इम्प्रूव होते हैं, अच्छे हो जाते हैं ईजिली. JRF and NET, you guys can go ahead with this paper, okay? All right, so apart from literature, there's political science, economics, management, and other subjects, so let your friends and relatives know about it. Okay, so how does Unacademy work? Unacademy के पास दो subscription है, that's Plus and Iconic. And with your Plus, there's live classes, quiz test, structured courses, unlimited access to so much of data. I'm still saying there's very, very less days left. I think 20 days or 25 days left to your examination. बहुत अच्छा material है Plus courses में, not only mine, but other teachers are giving very good courses. So if you want, you can go ahead and study from there. There's personal guidance in Iconic. Iconic is an upgrade, little higher to that, to Plus. So apart from this, there's study planner, test analysis, expert guidance, and study material. Okay, so these are the Plus and Iconic subscriptions. Okay, so Plus courses, may you have India's best educators, interactive live classes, structured courses and PDFs, live tests and quizzes. As I mentioned in Iconic, apart from all this, there's personal coach, personalized doubt solving sessions, preparatory study material, SOP, and interview. Okay, so with this, you can go ahead with my subscription. That's Rizvi 10. That's the code that you can use here, and that's for 24 months it's 18,000, for 12 months it's 13,050, for 6 months 10,440, and for 3 months it's 5,625. Okay, so just a second, I think I have opened another okay, so sorry, I think I have opened some another PDF. Just a second, please give me a minute. Yeah, so this is one, it is, yeah, all right. So with your Iconic, you can go ahead with my another code, and that is with my Iconic you can use my referral code again, and that's Rizvi 10. All right, here you can have for 24 months it's 40,500, for 12 months it's 23,400, and for 6 months it's 16,200. let me tell you कि एक और इसमें feature आ गया like Rizvi 10 you can get 10% discount plus you're getting 10% discount, and there's a much reduction in your 6 months, 3 months and 12 months subscription, so you can go ahead with this. Okay, as I mentioned, there's a lot of benefits with your plus. There's live classes, test series, unlimited practice, structure schedule and personal coach. And with Iconic, along with this you have study planner, study booster, personalized doubt solving session, SOP and interview preparation and preparatory study material. Okay, price hike होने वाला है 3 months और 1 month subscription के लिए, छोटे subscription के लिए please go ahead and definitely enroll. Very important because exam बहुत पास है and it's you will get a lot of data to study. Okay, so Bugs Bounty, if you see anything inappropriate, let the authorities know about it. कोई भी अगर inappropriate Unacademy के platform में video में दिखता है, so and you can just let your authorities know and claim your prize. Okay, special classes, every day we have special classes. जिस तरह से YouTube पे class free है, उस तरह से special classes भी free हैं. There's interactive live classes, polls for the learners, raise a hand, never miss a class, lecture notes, and anytime and anywhere. Okay, so every day, like every day today also we have a special class, and हम लोग multiple choice questions MCQs कर रहे हैं, which are very very important, and I would suggest that please be a part of the special classes because ये बहुत ही help करेगा. That's aiming for the October 21. All the aspirants were aiming for October 21 net. Alright, so we are beginning with the prose in the romantic period, a very important genre of that time that we know कि prose develop हो ही गया था, journals आ गए थे. If you see in the Augustan age, Addison and Steele ने journals लाए थे, Tatler and Spectator आ गए थे, धीरे धीरे करके so many journals were coming, so many essays were being written, prose were being written, criticism was being written. So this period was also of a very important genre that was developing, that is prose. Okay, so you can say that एक literary criticism को एक बहुत ही बड़ा push मिला था S.T. Coleridge के Biographia Literaria से. Why? Because in that he's talking about poetry, that how imagination, fancy and other elements of your mind work in order to bring a good piece of poetry, and that is what Biographia Literaria में S.T. Coleridge ने बहुत बात की. It's a very important test, and I'm sure in your college and in your university, wherever that you guys have studied, इस test को बहुत ही ज़्यादा focus किया गया होगा, because be it your primary or secondary, all those elements have been discussed in great detail. So Coleridge is very much credited with that. Also there was Thomas D. Quincy, and the things that he written. I mean he's written about opium addiction. I mean that is such a huge thing. आज के time में कोई लिख नहीं सकता that I was once addicted to opium, and it's kind of considered absolutely crime. But at that time it is considered कि Thomas D. Quincy ने he's written about opium addiction. That is of course a drug, and how he has how उसने किस तरह से उससे बाहर आया, उसके क्या effects है. So that was a very interesting thing. And also we have Charles Lamb के essays which are still asked in the examination. Okay, so very good afternoon to everyone again. Good afternoon, Anjali, Suman, Shivani. Okay, Shivani, I will do so. Hi, Vishal. Hello, Pooja. Hi, Manpreet. All right. Okay, everyone. Hi, Atul. Okay, so let's go ahead with our first, that's Biographia Literaria. Okay, just let me tell you, okay, once we are done with that, मैंने MCQs भी रखे, multiple choice question इस lesson में भी है. We're discussing again the romantic age. So there are 20 multiple choice questions that we will be discussing here. So please be there, be here in the class, क्योंकि बहुत ही important class है. Please focus. Okay, all right. So Biographia Literaria in full, it's Biographia Literaria or biographical sketches of my literary life and opinions. Okay, this is by S.T. Coleridge. We know Samuel Taylor Coleridge ने ये लिखा था, and this is what in full it is. In full it is known, if छोटे में in short form you say Biographia Literaria, but इसका पूरा form है Biographia Literaria or biographical sketches of my literary life and opinions. Okay, so it's basically biographical in nature, that's written by S.T. Coleridge. And he's talked about and he's talked about also his life and what his literary life is. Okay, yes, the sort of, that's Confessions of an Opium English Opium Eater. That's what Thomas D. Quincy has written. We'll discuss in the next slide. Okay, so this work is by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Okay, I hope that everybody, जो भी हमारे मेरे students अभी यहाँ पर हैं, they all have attended the Coleridge का class in the previous lessons, जो कि मैंने I think day before yesterday कराया था. It was I think yesterday I did Shelley and Byron. इससे पहले जो Keats and Coleridge कराया था. So remember, Coleridge had such intense imagination. He had such wild imagination. वो मतलब he, and it is also said that Samuel Taylor Coleridge also used to be under the influence of drug whenever he used to write. This is the reason कि कभी-कभी वो आधी work लिख के वो छोड़ देता था. तभी Christabel उसका incomplete है, कुबला खान incomplete है. But Samuel Taylor Coleridge also had immense imagination, and we all know, we remember the fact that romantics were emphasizing on what? They were emphasizing on imagination, which was completely contrary to what? To the Augustan age, which was focusing on what? Reason. Okay, so remember that imagination, mind, has played a very phenomenal role, a very profound role in the entire romantic poetry, and this is what exactly Samuel Taylor Coleridge will also be focusing on. किस तरह से imagination का बहुत importance दिया है. Okay, so this work by Samuel Taylor Coleridge was published in 2 volumes in 1817. Okay, so remember, this work was published in 1817, and it's much later, like 1798 maybe Lyrical Ballet came along with Wordsworth, and 1870. So it's a long gap, and we know that by this time Coleridge का poetical faculty develop हो गया था. So remember 1817. Okay, दूसरा edition, another edition of the work, to which Coleridge's daughter Sarah Coleridge appended notes and supplementary biographical material, was published in 1847. So remember, a second edition में Sarah Coleridge, that was Coleridge's daughter, Samuel Taylor Coleridge की daughter Sarah Coleridge ने publish किया था second volume, and that was in 1847. Okay, an important one. उस edition में there was biographical notes भी थे, other notes भी थे, and that was a little bigger because उसमें सारा ने और भी notes append किए थे. Append मतलब attach कर दिए था. Okay, so the first volume of the book recounts the author's friendship with poets like Robert Southey and William Wordsworth. Okay, so of course we know that it is biographical in detail. So there was information of Robert Southey, which was a great friend, and we know that Robert Southey के साथ उसने Panti-Socratic society develop करने की सोचा था कि utopic world में रहेंगे Susquehanna river के पास. And we know William Wordsworth के साथ बाद में इतना friendship नहीं रहा था William Wordsworth के साथ, but he wrote Lyrical Ballet, and so much of literary friendship was there between Robert Southey and William Wordsworth of Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Coleridge goes on to describe the influence of his philosophical development from his early teachers to such philosophers as Immanuel Kant, Johann Fichte, and Friedrich von Schilling. Okay, so these all are very, very important names. Please remember, if it comes in the examination, के Samuel Taylor Coleridge किससे influence था, it was Kant, Fichte, and Schelling से बहुत influence था. So this is also there in his philosophical writings, in his biography and literature. Also we can see echoes, or you can see glimpses, or you can see the influence of these legendary writers in the work of Coleridge. Okay, yes, Parminder, they were absolutely right. They were lake poets. That is, your Wordsworth, Coleridge, and Southey were considered lake poets. And Satanic poets, we know, Satanic school of thought, we know that Southey ने किसको बोला था. That was Byron, Shelley, and Keats. Okay, very good. All right. So this section includes his well-known discussion of the difference between fancy and imagination. Okay, so we know that two elements, fancy and imagination, have been used here, and that is what Coleridge goes on to discuss in this work. In the second volume, Coleridge concentrates on literary criticism and proposes theories about the creative process and the historical sources of the elements of poetry. Okay, so we know that यहाँ पे भी Coleridge ने, again, imagination has been always the focus of the romantic age, and this is the reason that they say especially Coleridge over here is saying that, everything, all your thoughts emerge from two faculties in your head. Faculties matlab two elements that are there, you just say that faculty only. So दो चीज़ें जो बहुत ही ज़्यादा influence करते, what helps you in writing, it's not reason. You can't calculate a poem and write. Poem को, it has to have good imagination, it has to have good fancy is imagination, but in a different context it is being used, which we will be discussing. Okay, so second volume में there's literary criticism, and he proposes theories about the creative process again coming from the imagination, and the historical sources of the elements of poetry. Okay, moving ahead. Biographia Literaria was the most important work of literary criticism of the English Romantic period. Okay, so remember that whenever criticism is being talked about, we know that Augustine Age में there's essay on criticism by Pope, then John Dryden has written essay on poesy, and then there's also essay on man that is written again by Pope here, there, then Battle of Books by Swift, and then we are coming to a much more robust, profound and deep analysis of poetry. And this was a very, very important, a very path-breaking, you can say, about these other phenomenal work, Biographia Literaria, very important of the English Romantic period. Okay, what did it did? It combined philosophy and literary criticism in a new way, and it was lastingly influential. Okay, it's still influential, it's still talked about, it is still read, and it combined philosophy and literary criticism in a very नया तरीके से, बहुत ही novel तरीके से. Okay, Coleridge intended Biographia Literaria to be short, preface to a collection of his poem Sibylline Leaves. Okay, so remember this, if it is asked that पहले Coleridge को इतना बड़ा जो work हो गया, Coleridge, I think he never thought कि वो कितना लिख सकता है. Okay, so Coleridge wrote and पहले तो उसने सोचा चलो मैं छोटा सा एक preface बना लूँगा, Sibylline Leaves जो मेरी poetry collection 1817 में ही आई थी वो, ही इसका मैं preface बना लूँगा और थोड़ा सा मैं लिख दूँगा कैसे तरीके से लिख दूँगा कि किस तरह से poetry होती है. Sibylline Leaves, so remember this point, it was in Sibylline Leaves when he wanted to add Biographia Literaria as a preface, but it went on to become a very important work. उसने separately publish किया. However, it quickly expanded in a 2-volume autobiography. Okay, 2-volume autobiography mixing memoir, philosophy, religion, and literary theory, and was heavily influenced by German criticism, the evaluation and interpretation of literature. So we know Kant, Schelling से वो कितना influence था. We know it was autobiographical in nature. He's added philosophy, religion, literary criticism, literary theory, everything in one, and it was it was not a short essay, it was a 2-volume work, which was very, very heavy. So Coleridge himself described Biographia Literaria as an immethodical miscellany of life and opinions. Okay, so remember what has Coleridge himself described, could be asked in the examination कि Coleridge अपने work को क्या describe बोलता है. Immethodical miscellany मतलब miscellany is like a varied, बहुत सारी चीज़ें. Immethodical मतलब कि कोई method नहीं है, but he's just written. Okay, so immethodical miscellany, there's no method to it, he's just writing about varied things is memoir मतलब पुरानी बातें, पुरानी चीज़ें friends के साथ. Philosophy is your own philosophical thoughts, religion and literary theory. In 1906, remember it is about 18th century, years after Coleridge even died, the poet Arthur Symons called the work the greatest book of criticism in English and one of the most annoying books in any language. Okay, so remember Arthur Symons at 1906, that 20th century. This can be asked, कभी पूछा जाता है कि what did किस book के लिए Arthur Symons ने ये बोला, और कि किसने बोला, all these things are asked. So remember Arthur Symons was also very important writer of the 20th century. And in 1906, he said that Coleridge ka Biographia Literaria is the greatest book of criticism in English and one of the most annoying books in any language. Okay, it includes some of the most important English writing on poetic theory, which we will be discussing. We know कि poetic theory के बारे में इसने बहुत बात किया है इसमें. Some of it is a response to ideas of poetry advanced by his close friend and collaborator William Wordsworth. So we know that he all these trends were influenced by each other's poetry. William Wordsworth से भी वो काफ़ी influence हुआ था, and it's basically advanced poetry of his. So what was Wordsworth writing? Wordsworth writing that it is important to have spontaneous overflow of your thoughts and feelings, and recollected in tranquility. That is what William Wordsworth is saying. And here here Coleridge का motto था imagination and the suspension of disbelief. So Wordsworth का one more ahead, you can see it was an advanced idea of a Wordsworth poetry, and this was first in the 1800 preface to the joint publication, we know that was Lyrical Ballet, and then in the preface to Wordsworth collected poems. Okay, so this was a starting, you can say. Lyrical Ballet gave a push to Coleridge to write something as profound, as deep, and as philosophical, literary autobiography, his Biographia Literaria. Referring to the latter, Coleridge says he wants in Biographia Literaria to make clear on what points I coincide with the opinions in that preface and in what points I altogether differ. So, of course, there was a difference in the theory of Coleridge and Wordsworth, and he has said that, here I will be discussing, मैं discuss करूँगा कि किस points Lyrical Ballet में जो theory थी Wordsworth की, I am saying yes, they are correct, और कौन से points को I am saying that no, they are not right for me, okay? Okay. Point 10 again. Okay, so Coleridge himself described biography. Okay, so I'm coming back to the 10th point. Maybe I think Shivani is asking. Just in 1 minute, I will explain this again. So please, students, just focus here. Immethodical miscellany. Immethodical मतलब कोई method नहीं है इसमें. It is not that. See, he is talking about religion. He's talking about politics. He's talking about his own life. He's talking about memoirs. He's talking about friendship. These are what? These are miscellaneous things. Miscellaneous things मतलब miscellany मतलब होता है बहुत सारी चीज़ें. It's miscellaneous, okay? So immethodical मतलब कि कोई method नहीं है. It is not that he's talking in one chapter he's talking about religion, in another chapter he's talking about politics, in another chapter he's talking about friendship. No, everything is in a he's talking about everything in a flow, and it's immethodical, but it is miscellaneous. Okay, so that's what the point 10th is. I hope I'm clear with this. All right. Okay, so moving ahead. All right, so we are coming to the point, imagination and the suspension of disbelief. Okay, so Shivani, let me know if I'm clear with this. All right. Okay, so just let me know, and then meanwhile I'm moving ahead. So imagination and the suspension of disbelief. So we know that what Wordsworth was writing, and then Coleridge here, it's talking about imagination and the suspension of disbelief. In one of the most famous passages in Biographia Literaria, Coleridge offers a theory of creativity. Okay, we'll come back to this point, but let's see that how. Yeah. Yes, Parminder, you are right. So in one of the most, we come back to this one. So let's see what exactly Biographia Literaria is talking about. In one of the most famous passages in Biographia Literaria, Coleridge offers a theory of creativity. Okay, so remember this. ये बहुत college university अपने syllabus में prescribe करती हैं. IGNOU के syllabus में भी है. I'm sure this one and all the other open universities. And this is very important. So this is he offers a theory of creativity. He divides imagination into primary and secondary. Okay, so there is imagination that is in your head. Okay, we imagine. वो कह रहा है imagination दो तरीके के हैं. एक होता है primary imagination and एक होता है secondary imagination. Okay, primary का मतलब we know primary मतलब क्या होता है, most important. Okay, जैसे primary school, primary collection or whatever. So primary का मतलब होता है most important, and secondary का मतलब होता है जो थोड़ा secondary है, जो बाद में आए primary के. Okay, so primary imagination is common to all humans. Now primary imagination, that is most important. So primary imagination सबके पास होता है. We know, we are reading, we all are literature students, we read books, और जब हम लोग book पढ़ते हैं तो हमारे दिमाग में क्या एक कहानी चलती है. We imagine things, and even as normal human beings, we go on imagining things, and there's so this primary imagination सबके पास होता है. Okay, so remember imagination के दो parts होते हैं. That is what Coleridge is saying. Okay, one is your primary imagination and the other one is secondary imagination. Primary imagination is common to all. Everyone has primary imagination. It enables us to perceive and make sense of the world. Okay, so this is exactly primary imagination जो भी sane person होता है it has, and it helps us in understanding the world, and it helps us in understanding the world, and it helps us in moving ahead with the world. Okay, it is a creative function. It is all about imagination. It is a creative function, and thereby repeats the divine act of creation. Okay, so the divine act of creation, he's kind of saying that even when the world was created, it was first imagined and then it was created. So it's a creative function. The secondary imagination enables individuals to transcend the primary imagination, not merely to perceive connections but to make them. So what he's trying to say here, that secondary imagination सबके पास नहीं होता है. सेकेंडरी इमेजिनेशन बहुत ही चुनिंदा लोग के पास होता है, एंड ये जो लोग होते हैं, हाउ इट वर्क्स, सेकेंडरी इमेजिनेशन इनेबल्स इंडिविजुअल्स टू ट्रांसेंड द प्राइमरी इमेजिनेशन. ट्रांसेंड मतलब होता है उसके ऊपर चले जाना. Okay, so primary imagination, everyone has primary imagination, but the secondary imagination क्या करता है, everyone does not have, लेकिन जिसके पास होता है वो transcend करता है, वो primary imagination से भी ऊपर चला जाता है. This, remember Coleridge. Coleridge को समझो that Coleridge had primary imagination as well as secondary imagination. Why? Look at his writings, Rhyme of the Ancient Marina, Kubla Khan, or whatever that he wrote, इतना intense imagination था. He's talking about Alps and rivers and seas and mountains and oceans, and he's going on and on with imagination, with primary imagination as well as secondary imagination. Okay. It is the creative impulse that enables poetry and the art. Now this is exactly the secondary imagination जो poets के पास होता है, and this is what helps the poets in writing their creative writing their creative poetry or novels or drama, whatever that they want. So this secondary imagination is not in the hands of common man. It is there only for some few selected poets and writers जो कि उस secondary, उस primary imagination को transcend करते हैं, उससे भी ऊपर चले जाते हैं, secondary imagination को use करके they write their work. Writing about his contributions to the lyrical ballet, which includes the Rhyme of the Ancient Marina. So remember, as I mentioned, कि उसने कितना, we all studied Rhyme of the Ancient Marina in our last class yesterday. A very interesting work, बहुत मज़ेदार, कहाँ से शुरू हो रहा है, कहाँ पे ख़त्म हो रहा है. It is very hypnotic. Once you start reading Rhyme of the Ancient Marina, तो आपको जानना के मन करता है कि आगे क्या है. Very hypnotic. It is very interesting that what is actually happening. Why? What is the sailor? And बाद में भी बहुत ही open-ended question छोड़ देता है कि बाद में sailor का क्या होता है. So this is a very advanced level of imagination that Coleridge is writing. Okay, and then of course we have Kubla Khan again, intense imagination, and there were students जब मैं Kubla Khan पढ़ा रही थी, they were like, ma'am, I'm able to imagine Kubla Khan and all. So this is exactly what secondary imagination Coleridge is talking about. Okay, so Rhyme of the Ancient Marina, Coleridge says, remember, अगर ये पूछा जाए एग्जामिनेशन में कि बायोग्राफी लिटरेरिया को एक्सप्लेन करने में कौन सी पोएम ने कोलरिज का इस्तेमाल किया, दैट इज ही हैज़ टेकन द एग्जाम्पल ऑफ द राइम ऑफ द एंशंट मरीना, एन इम्पॉर्टेंट पॉइंट, सो प्लीज मेक श्योर दैट यू नो दिस. ओके, so writing about his contribution to the lyrical ballet, which includes the Rhyme of the Ancient Marina, Coleridge says that although his characters were supernatural or at least romantic, he tried to give them a human interest and semblance of disbelief that would prompt the readers to the willing suspension of disbelief, which constitute a poetic faith. Okay, so what he's trying to say is that कि मैंने Rhyme of the Ancient Marina में, he's talking now about lyrical ballet, जिसमें उसने Rhyme of the Ancient Marina डाला था, and उसने ये बोल रहा है that I have spoken about Rhyme of the Ancient Marina in my lyrical ballet, but उसको we know, the readers know, और हमें पता है कि जो हम लोग सेलर पढ़ रहे हैं, he's not a normal human being, and and there is some supernatural element, though lag raha hai ki wo normal human being hai, lekin it is something supernatural is there, and the readers are prompted, we have to believe, we are pushed to believe that willing suspension of disbelief, okay, but we are willingly suspending the belief that that this is a normal supernatural person, and we are willingly suspending that disbelief, okay. So that's a willing suspension of disbelief जो कि Coleridge अपने readers को convince कर लेता है, okay, and this constitutes a poetic faith. So remember, thoughts recollected in tranquility is basically Wordsworth का motto, and here Coleridge का motto है willing suspension of disbelief, okay. You know that the person here, the character here talked about is not a normal, but you're willingly suspending that belief up, voluntarily you are participating that, okay, it's okay, I'm just reading, and you're reading the poem that as if it is a normal human being, and that is what Coleridge is talking here, okay. So this is what exactly constitute Coleridge's poetic faith. Willing suspension of disbelief, okay. I hope I'm clear. Okay, so moving ahead, please, these are very important points. Make sure that you are understanding each and every point very clearly, okay. Okay, so now we are coming ahead to another very very important writer, and that's Thomas Benson de Quincy. उसको बोलते थे Thomas de Quincy, इसका पूरा नाम है ये Thomas Benson de Quincy, 1785 to 1859, okay, exactly, right. Okay, so just let me have water. So Thomas de Quincy, 1785 to 1859, he was an English writer, essayist and literary critic, best known for his Confessions of an English Opium Eater, that was in 1821, okay. All these years are also very important. कभी chronologically बोझ लेते हैं कि chronologically works को लगाओ कि पहले कौन आया, बाद में कौन आया. So remember, 1817 was your biographical literaria, उससे पहले Lyrical Ballet 1798 में था. So Lyrical Ballet 1798, biographical literaria 1817, and then we have Confessions of an English Opium Eater in 1821, and this was by Thomas de Quincy, 1785 to 1859. Many scholars suggest that in publishing this work, de Quincy inaugurated the tradition of addiction literature in the West, okay. So again, we know that it is about opium, okay, and opium is a drug, okay, and which is totally banned. One should not be under the influence of opium, because opium actually messes up with your head, okay. So addiction literature, that is what a lot of people are saying. तो अगर कभी examination में, क्योंकि critics ने इसको नाम दिया है, that who started the addiction literature, because opium का addiction हो जाता है. Addiction is के लत पड़ना किसी चीज़ का बहुत ही ज़्यादा, you are just inclined towards that very very just more than normal, okay. So that's addiction literature that Thomas de Quincy को बोला जाता है, that he is the one who inaugurated this, okay. In 1821, Thomas de Quincy went to London to dispose of some translations from German authors, but was persuaded first to write and publish an account of his opium experiences, which that year appeared in the London magazine. Okay, so what happened? Thomas de Quincy was basically, he used to have a lot of opium, और बहुत ही opium के influence में रहता था. 1821 में वो गया कुछ translations के लिए, but उसको बोला गया that listen, you talk about your experiences as an opium addict person, okay. So किस तरह से तुम्हारे क्या opium addiction के क्या repercussions थे, क्या result थे, क्या effects थे, तुम कैसे बाहर आए, you talk about that, okay. So we know that this always is a very interesting one, because we know a very strong Bollywood actor was also addicted to drugs, and uski movie Sanju movie was such a big hit, so everybody wants to know that how that person is coming. So you can say Sanjay that he's also confessed of how he was a drug addict, and here we have Thomas de Quincy is talking about Confessions of an English Opium Eater in that time, okay. So the Confessions of an English Opium Eater was soon published in book form, okay. So this became a very big hit. People started reading it because you're always interested to know because कि क्या है, क्या होता है, why do people get addicted, इसमें है क्या, what intoxication is there. So it became a very big hit, the Confessions, and he's talked about his own opium taking habits. He made many content. Remember that this was published first in London Magazine, okay, so it's a very important point. Remember that London Magazine में इसको publish किया गया था. He made many contribution in also Blackwood Edinburgh Magazine and Tate Magazine. Okay, these were magazines in which Thomas de Quincey was always participating. Okay, so his another work, Suspiria de Profundis, appeared in Blackwood magazine, as did the English Mail Coach, okay, and his another work, Joan of Arc, was published in Tate's. Between 1835 and 1849, Tate published a series of De Quincey's reminiscences of Wordsworth, Coleridge, Robert Southey, and other figures among the late poets, a series that taken together constitute one of his very important works. So please remember that Tate में this was another journal, a newspaper of that time that was coming, and उसने Thomas de Quincey ने इसमें बहुत publish किया है. So अगर ये पूछा जाए, because such questions really come in the examination कि Thomas de Quincey ने Wordsworth, Coleridge और Southey के बारे में कौन से newspaper या journal में बात किया. So remember it was Tate, T-A-I-T, okay? Okay, so moving ahead with this, Confessions of an English Opium Eater, this was 1821, okay? So it is an autobiographical account, okay, written by Thomas de Quincey about his opium addiction and its effect on his life, okay? So it was a very interesting autobiographical account कि वो कैसे opium इतना जो बड़ा drug था वो कैसे पहले लेता था और उसकी ज़िंदगी में क्या effect हुआ. In fact, you know, a lot of writers of that time used to take opium because, you know, opium, what it does is it opens your imagination, you know, so that is what it kind of, at that time it was this belief, you know, and it plays with your imagination, and that is what it happened, that, you know, it was kind of, you know, people, the poets of that time, Coleridge and, you know, Quincy, these people were taking just so that they can write in a much more imaginative manner. So the Confession was the first major work that de Quincey published, and the one that won him fame almost overnight. Okay, so he became famous overnight with Confessions of an English Opium Eater. It was like, क्या है confessions तुम्हारे, let us all know and just get famous, and that is what happened overnight. It was first published anonymously in October 21 in the London Magazine, a very important point, पहले publish हुई थी London Magazine में. The Confession was released in book form in 1822, again एक book form में आया था 1822 में, and again in 1856 in an edition revised by de Quincey, okay. So, as originally published, de Quincey's account was organized in two parts. Okay, there were two parts to it. Part one begins with a notice to the reader. Okay, पहले के time में ये बहुत ही, you know, बहुत ही normal था कि reader को address कर रहे हो as if you're talking to the reader. Okay, so part one begins with a notice to the reader to establish the narrative frame. I here present you, courteous reader, with a record of a remarkable period in my life. Okay, so he is talking of his opium period with a remarkable, मतलब बहुत ही amazing, बहुत ही मज़ेदार, remarkable period in my life, and it is followed by the substance of part one. So, you know, part one goes on with that, how he's explaining his autobiographical, you know, details he's giving, that, you know, how he was in opium addiction, what were effects and all. Preliminary confessions devoted to the author's childhood and youth and concentrated upon the emotional. So second part, sorry, I have to mention, the second part was about preliminary confessions, you know, pehle ke confessions devoted to the author's childhood. Sorry, this is part one only. This is part two. This is part one only. So part one begins to the reader, and then it goes on with preliminary confession, मतलब पहले के confessions. Just let me write. This is first part only. So preliminary confessions, which falls in the first part. Preliminary, again I'm repeating. It means कि पहले के जो पहले के confessions थे childhood के. He is devoted to the author's childhood and youth, and concentrated upon the emotional and psychological factors that underlay the opium experiences, especially the period in his late teens that de Quincy spent as a homeless runaway in Oxford Street in London, 1802 and 1803. Okay, so preliminary confessions may he's telling about his childhood. So it's very bizarre that he was so young, he was such a child, and he was an addiction tha childhood se, okay. So he used to take opium even when he was a child in his youth. And uske baad, I mean, if you're taking a drug, I mean, it is disastrous effect, it's absolutely condemnable. Even ek baar bhi nahi, it's very you just cannot, you have to stay away from drugs. And that is what he's talking about, that how he took drugs when he was a child and how he was when he was a youth, and concentrated upon the emotional and psychological factors कि कैसे उसने लिया और क्या experiences थे, especially the period in his late teens that D. Quincy spent as a homeless runaway in Oxford Street in London 1802 and 1803. So he was also homeless at that point of time when he was under this influence. Part 2, second part of the work, is split into several sections, okay. So there are several sections in part 2. There's a relatively brief introduction and connecting passage, followed by the pleasures of opium. Okay, so there's introduction, there are connecting passages. Then there's pleasures of opium, which discusses the early and largely positive phase of the author's experience with the drug from 1804 till 1812. So pleasures of opium is talking about. So please remember, ये पूछ सकते हैं कि preliminary confessions कौन से part में आता है, या preliminary confessions में इसने कौन से period के बारे में बात की. Preliminary का नाम मतलब ही होता है पहले का, and so पहले का period मतलब childhood and youth. Okay, so remember, this is in part 1, and the second part is the pleasures of opium, which discusses the early and largely positive phase of author's experience with the drug. So he's saying that my experience with the drug was not only negative, it was positive also, and that is what he's discussing in your second part. That is, and the positive part that he's discussing is from the period 1804 till 1812. Introduction to the opium is also there. That is another part, and which delivers a second installment of autobiography taking D. Quincy from youth to maturity. Okay, so now pains of opium, he's discussing about the pleasures of opium. Then comes the pains of opium. Ab yahan pe kya he's talking about, from youth, from a young person to an adult person, from youth to maturity. Here he's talking about that. Now he's also talking about, now it was introduction to the pains, now the pain of opium actually comes, and he's talking about the pains of opium, which recounts the extreme of the author's opium experiences up to that time, with insomnia, nightmares, frightening visions, and difficult physical symptoms. Okay, so these were exactly the pain of opiums were at that time. Another notice to the reader attempts to clarify the chronology of the whole, and then he's again ending it with notice to the reader, where he's giving entire chronology of what happened to him and in what time. Okay. All right, so now we are moving ahead to On the Knocking at the Gate in Macbeth. That is another very famous and a very important essay जो कि बहुत बार पूछा जा चुका है. इनफैक्ट सिर्फ यही पूछा गया है कि On the Knocking at the Gate in Macbeth किसने लिखा था. This was a NET question, that was Thomas D. Quincy. Now NET can ask you much more questions from this. This is the reason that we need to Parminder, it was divided into 2 parts. Second part was divided into 5 parts. Okay, second part was further divided. All right. So On the Knocking at the Gate in Macbeth is very important. So please focus here. So it is an essay in Shakespeare criticism by the English author Thomas D. Quincy, first published in October 1823 edition of the London Magazine. So remember, Opium Eater, Confessions of an English Opium Eater, was also published in the London Magazine, and also your On the Knocking at the Gate in Macbeth was also published in 1823 in the London Magazine. Though brief, it is less than 200 words in length. बहुत ही बड़ा essay नहीं है. So if you guys want, you guys can also read it. Available on internet. It has been called D. Quincy's finest single critical piece. It is a very fine piece. बहुत ही अच्छी तरीके से लिखा गया. This is the reason कि बहुत important है. And it is one of the most penetrating critical footnotes in our literature. Okay, इसमें बहुत ही ज़्यादा amazing footnotes. Footnotes, what are their footnotes? मतलब कि जैसे it is all written here, उसके बाद अगर कुछ और mention करना तो you mark it here, और फिर नीचे you can see कि यहाँ पे इसके description दिया होता है. That is a footnote. Okay, so a lot of footnotes are also there. So अगर ये पूछा जाए कि what is a very special thing, or footnotes I option में, so remember footnotes have been added a lot in this critical piece of writing, that is On the Knocking Gate at the Macbeth. Thomas De Quincey opens his essay by explaining that he has been deeply moved by a particular movement in William Shakespeare's Macbeth. So, actually, De Quincey was extremely moved by a very particular scene, and that scene was on the knocking of the gate. जब Duncan, we know कि Macbeth is about what? Macbeth is about Macbeth ambitions और किस तरह से लेडी Macbeth ने Macbeth को पुश किया था कि Duncan को मर्डर कर दो, खुद किंग बन जाओ, लेकिन एंड में सब लोग मर जाते हैं, Macbeth भी मर जाता है. So we know that, लेकिन what happens, एक जो सीन था Macbeth में, that was the knocking of the gate. जब Duncan का मर्डर हो जाता है, knocking होती है, that was the scene जबकि Thomas De Quincey को बहुत मूव किया था. This emotional response, okay, so he had a very emotional response after coming. When he read about the scene, there was an emotional response that Thomas De Quincey confused because he could not explain why the moment stirred him. Okay, so when this happened, when he read about that, the murder, King Duncan has been murdered by Macbeth, King Duncan को Macbeth ने मार दिया है, तो there is Macbeth and Lady Macbeth are talking, and all of a sudden there is a knocking. Okay, so you can imagine कि एक बहुत ही बड़ा murder हुआ है, a king has been murdered, and then there is a knocking, and that knocking was something just Thomas De Quincey को बहुत ही stir किया था, बहुत ही move किया था. He got extremely touched by the scene and why it happens. Thomas De Quincey recalls the moment after Macbeth murders Duncan and hears a knock at the castle gate. Okay, a very important point. De Quincey feels a wave of solemnity and grave consequence of Macbeth. Okay, so now De Quincey is saying that that उसने Macbeth पढ़ा नहीं, लेकिन अब उसी moment उसको realize हो गया था कि जब knocking हुई थी that there is something wrong that is going to happen with Macbeth और Macbeth का disaster होगा. Okay, so that is solemnity is something quiet sadness. He knew that in his heart he was sad, and something very deeply grave, that is very negative and very profound and very deep consequences, results are going to happen to Macbeth. De Quincey decides he must explore why he feels a sense of sympathy towards Macbeth at this moment. Now De Quincey is confused. Okay, he's like, why am I being so moved by this? मुझे इतना क्यों फर्क पड़ रहा है? I am reading a text और एक गेट नॉकिंग एट द गेट हो रहा है. वाई इज़ इट कि मुझे इतना सिंपैथी आ रहा है Macbeth के साथ? वाई इज़ इट दैट आई एम फीलिंग सो मूव्ड? De Quincey returns to the reader's attention to Macbeth and the effect the knocking at the gate stirred with him. Okay, so that's what he's talking about in the work, that why is he getting moved. He says that logic states that such a simple act should not evoke any kind of reaction within him, but he understands that he did feel some emotion that is hard to describe. So he's saying that this is a very simple thing, a knocking. Okay, so a knocking is not a very important scene for a normal reader. He's like, इतना क्यों सोच रहे हो, एक knock ही तो था. But he's like, no, there is something that is moving him with this knocking of the gate at the Macbeth. De Quincey then retells the story of a murderer who gruesomely killed a family. Okay, so now De Quincey is going back to a reality where it actually happened. इस knocking ने इसको इतना disturb किया. Why? Because there is a story behind it, and he is talking about the story of a murderer. एक murderer था जिसने एक पूरी family को kill कर दिया था. Just as he finished the murder, there was a knock at the front door, similar to what Macbeth experiences after murdering Duncan. So remember this point, that this was actually a reality incident that happened. जो थॉमस डी क्विंसी को पता चला था कि मर्डरर था, उसने ग्रूसमली, मतलब बहुत ही ब्रूटली, बहुत ही रूथलेसली, बहुत ही हैवानियत से किसी फैमिली को मारा था. एंड जब उसने मर्डर कर दिया था सबको, ही हर्ड अ नॉक एट द फ्रंट डोर, एंड दिस इज एग्जैक्टली व्हाट ही इज रिलेटिंग इट विद द नॉक एट द गेट ऑफ व्हेन Macbeth kills King Duncan. An acquaintance told De Quincey about the murder and described the unsettling jolt he felt when he read about the knock at the front door. Okay, so एक उसके acquaintance ने De Quincey को इस murder के बारे में बताया था, and and that person also told that when I read about that knock, that there was a knock at the front door, I was extremely jolted, I was terrified, I was extremely horrified. So De Quincey feels validated that he followed his feelings and did not dismiss his emotional response to the knock at the gate in Macbeth. So वो कह रहा है कि मेरी friend, he was also moved when he read कि उस murderer के, जब उसने किल किया, एक नॉक आया, उसी तरह से डी क्विंसी कह रहे थे, इट्स ओके, आई एम अ नॉर्मल ह्यूमन बीइंग, आई एम ऑल्सो गेटिंग मूव्ड बाय द फैक्ट दैट knock at the gate in Macbeth is a very, if I'm getting moved, so it's validated, because human feeling is that you will get moved and you might feel sympathetic for the character. So De Quincey explains that it is necessary for Shakespeare to evoke an emotional connection to both the victim and the murderer in Macbeth. So what he's actually trying to say, that Shakespeare, he's actually, we can say that Shakespeare ka again genius is coming on the surface, where we are seeing that Shakespeare ने इस knocking से एक बहुत ही अमेजिंग बात कन्वे की है अपने रीडर्स को, एंड दैट इज़ वॉट दैट डी क्विंसी एक्सप्लेन, इट इज़ नेसेसरी फॉर शेक्सपियर. शेक्सपियर इज़ बेसिकली इवोकिंग इमोशनल कनेक्शन टू बोथ द विक्टिम एंड द मर्डरर. नाउ द विक्टिम इज़ डेड, वी नो, एंड वी आर फीलिंग सैड फॉर किंग डंकन. किंग डंकन की डेथ हो गई, एंड फीलिंग वेरी वेरी सैड कि ओ गॉड, किंग डंकन हैज़ डाइड. बट दिस नॉकिंग इज़ ऑल्सो टेलिंग द फैक्ट दैट देयर इज समथिंग डिजास्टर्स दैट इज stored for Macbeth, and we are feeling something for Macbeth too. Okay, so you can see Shakespeare genius is again coming here, and that is what Thomas De Quincey is talking about in his work. Okay, he argues that death is the most degrading experience for any person, and all people must face it. Okay, so he's talking about death here. A poet must create an emotional connection to the murderer if the poem is to be anything more than vulgar. Look at the last degrading act of all people. So he's saying that murder is a very gruesome act. किसी भी poem, किसी भी work, किसी भी novel में पढ़ोगे, but it is very important, it is in responsibility of the writer, of the poet, कि एक इमोशनल कनेक्शन लाए मर्डर के साथ भी, ताकि द रीडर इज फीलिंग फॉर द विक्टिम एज वेल एज फॉर द विलन एज वेल. ओके, so De Quincey recalls times people naturally feel sympathy for other people. So he's talking that it is human to feel sympathetic. कोई अगर आप किसी को दुख में देखते हो, even if it is a villain, somewhere you feel at one point of time maybe that feeling sympathetic, like for Macbeth, you feel sympathy for him, you feel that बेचारा फालतू में फंस गया, किंग डंकन को मार के. Okay, so he describes the feeling of seeing a woman grasp for breath after she wakes from fainting. Okay, so now he's describing his own feeling. He recalls the feeling of hearing the first sounds of wheel rattling away after a moment of silence in a funeral procession. Okay, so these are very human things that he's feeling. Everyone feels if any if any ambulance is going which has a dead person, or agar koi somebody is going to bury or cremate that dead body, you feel it is a very sympathy, human emotion, you feel sad for that moment. He explains that both of these moments create an emotional response because they mark the moment when life is suspended. Thomas De Quincey writes that best way to understand an action is to observe the reactions of other people. Okay, so it's okay that he's saying that अपने खुद के actions आप तभी समझोगे जब आप दूसरों को observe करोगे कि उनकी reactions क्या हैं. So it's a wonderful work, very important, and something that everyone should definitely focus. It's a very interesting, और 2000 words का है. अगर पढ़ना चाहो, just for a interesting read, you can go ahead with this. Okay, now we are coming to another very important work, that Essays of Elia. This is by Charles Lamb, and Charles Lamb we know has a very profound role in marking the literary age of that period of giving literary criticism, very important essays to that romantic age. So it is a collection of essays of Elia. ये भी पूछा जा चुका है एग्जाम में कि essays of Elia किसने लिखा था, and that's Charles Lamb. It is a collection of essays है, essays का collection है. It was first published in book in 1823, and a second volume, Last Essays of Elia, came in 10 साल के बाद 1833 by the publisher Edward Moxon. Okay, so the essays in the collection first began appearing in the London magazine in 1820, and it continued to 1825. Lamb's essays were very popular and were printed in many subsequent editions throughout the 19th century. बहुत ही popular essays थे, and it just came, and remember again, London magazine was a very popular paper of that magazine of that time, and it was coming and coming. So this again was in the London magazine. Thomas De Quincey का भी Confessions and Macbeth, the Knocking at the Gate, were published in the London magazine. So is Essays of Elia. Okay, this could This could be asked examination, and this is very important. Yes, Parminder, you're right. Charles Lamb's sister was not mentally sane. Okay, coming back, Lamb ka jo essay tha, it's very popular and been printed in many subsequent editions. The personal and conversational tone of the essay has charmed many readers. The essay established Lamb in the title he now beholds, that of the most delightful English essays. Okay, so Lamb is considered as a very nice, very delightful, very मज़ेदार essays, because बहुत ही simple language, बहुत ही conversational language में उसने लिखा है. Lamb himself is the Elia. Okay, so remember कि जो essays of Elia है, अपने आप को उसने Lamb ने अपने आप को Elia बोला है, of the collection, and his sister is Mary, is cousin Bridget. So the essays of Elia में एक और character है, that is your cousin Bridget, and that is whom? That is Mary Lamb, and Mary Lamb was not mentally sane. Okay, so remember this one, Lamb is Elia and Mary is cousin Bridget. This can be asked in the examination, that who was Elia and who was cousin Bridget. That is, Lamb and Mary was cousin Bridget. Charles first used the pseudonym Elia for an essay on the South Sea House where he had worked decades earlier. Elia was the last name of an Italian man who worked there at the same time as Charles, and after that essay, the name stuck. Okay, so Elia was basically an essay, उसने एक Italian man का था, जिसमें जो एक work था उसमें Italian man था, उसका नाम Elia था, and that is how he got this name. Right, Shivani, very right. I totally, yes, this is a very valid and a very sweet point. Thank you, Shivani, for this. Shivani is mentioning that how Charles stayed with his sister throughout his life. He never married and always took care of her. That's very right. Okay, coming back here, American editions of both the essays and the last essays were published in the Philadelphia in 1828. At the time, American publishers were unconstrained by copyright law and often reprinted materials from English books and periodicals. So the American collection of the last essays precedes British. Okay, so just remember this point, कि American collection में last essays was also there, which kind of published Charles' essays. Critics have traced the influence of earlier writers in Lamb's style, notably Sir Thomas Browne and Robert Burton, writers who also influenced Lamb's contemporary and acquaintance de Quincy. So remember, Robert Burton, Sir Thomas Browne का बहुत influence दिखता है Charles Lamb के essays में, Thomas de Quincy में भी. Okay, some of Lamb's later pieces in the same style and spirit were collected in a body called Iliana. Okay, so Iliana was another work in which Charles Lamb has given her many essays. Okay, coming now to the 4 Ages of Poetry by Thomas Love Peacock, an overview. Remember, this is a very important work, and Sydney ने इसका जो था Defense of Poetry. Remember the Defense of Poetry that Sydney had also written, and that was in relation with the 4 Ages of Poetry by Thomas Love Peacock. So quickly, let's see what this talks about. So Peacock sympathizes neoclassical critical principles and parodies Wordsworth romantic ideas. So remember, Thomas Peacock was very much against Wordsworth, कि Wordsworth ने अच्छा नहीं लिखा है, उसके बहुत idea को parody किया था, मतलब there were of course people जो कि बोलेंगे कि ये तुम लोग क्या रोमांटिक एज वाले राइटर्स पोइट्स लिख रहे हो. लुक एट द न्यू क्लासिकल एज, लुक एट व्हाट ड्राइडन वाज राइटिंग, लुक एट व्हाट अलेक्जेंडर पोप वाज राइटिंग. सो पीकॉक वाज वन ऑफ देम. सो पीकॉक 4 एजेस ऑफ पोइट्री में थॉमस लव पीकॉक हैज़ सिंपथाइज, उसने बोला है कि न्यू क्लासिकल पोइट्री बहुत अच्छी थी, वर्ड्सवर्थ के रोमांटिक आइडियाज़ बेकार हैं. सो द एसे द 4 एजेस ऑफ पोइट्री डिजर्व्स टू बी एस्टीम फॉर इट्स ओन विटी इनसाइट्स एंड ऑल्सो बिकॉज शेली वॉज इम्पेल्ड टू राइट डिफेंस ऑफ पोइट्री इन रिप्लाई टू इट. नाउ ऑफ कोर्स वी नो दैट शेली ने इसको बहुत ही ज़्यादा जब 4 एजेस ऑफ पोइट्री आया एंड लव पीकॉक का, एंड ही इज सेइंग दैट what Wordsworth is writing is rubbish, new classical poets were writing, they were writing was fantastic. So Shelley came and he wrote the Defense of Poetry, and this is where he has remarked that he's given a reply to Thomas Love Peacock. Okay, Peacock says, everything that is artificial is anti-poetical. Peacock goes on to declare that poetry inevitably declined as the age of gold that made way to silver and then to brass. Okay, so he is basically saying that there was age of gold, there was the age of silver, and there was the age of brass. Okay, Peacock says that English poetry has passed through the iron age of chivalry and romance literature, the golden age of Shakespeare, the silver age of Dryden and Pope, and has reached the age of brass. Okay, so how many ages? Let's see. So there was there was iron age and of chivalry, iron age of chivalry. We've seen that happening in medieval literature when there's Maud Arthur is being written, there's chivalry and their ballets are being written. So that's the iron age that Thomas Love Peacock is saying. So please remember these ages: iron age of chivalry and romantic literature. Then comes the golden age, and the golden age we know koi nahi ho sakta but one person, that is Shakespeare. Golden age of Shakespeare. Then came the silver age of Dryden and Pope, and then came the brass age. Okay, and that is your romantic age. So we know that iron is a very tough one, kind of you can say foundation build ho raha tha. Golden age is like a beautiful age. Your silver age is like a good age, nice age that's happening. And then brass is the very cheap metal, and that is what is saying that cheap poetry is being written, artificial poetry is being written, it is not nice, in which contemporary romantic poets have retreated into solitude and private meditation, distancing themselves from the most important aspects of the life of their time. So he's saying that these romantic poets isolation में रहते हैं, मेडिटेशन में रहते हैं, हमेशा अपने अलग रहते हैं, पोइट्री लिखते हैं. दे आर नॉट विद द वर्ल्ड, और वो लोग वर्ल्ड के बारे में नहीं लिख रहे हैं, दे आर जस्ट राइटिंग अबाउट एनीथिंग, एंड दैट्स वेरी वेरी आर्टिफिशियल. दैट इज व्हाट ही इज सेइंग. ओके, so he complains that poetry of the romantic era had divorced itself from praxis and so became self-conscious and essentially useless. मतलब कोई practical element नहीं है, it is only self-conscious, अपने खुद के imagination के बारे में, अपने खुद के experiences के बारे में, अपने खुद के life के बारे में लिख रहे हैं. They are not connecting with the practicalities of life, and essentially it is useless. That is what he's saying, that's totally useless. So the development of poetry passed through 4 ages according to Peacock, again mentioning here Iron Age, Golden Age, Silver Age, and then there was your Brass Age. Okay, so let's quickly see. Iron or Bardic Age, in which society was in its infancy and poets were the sole depositories of all the knowledge of their age. Okay, so please, a very important point, please note this down, क्योंकि एग्जामिनेशन में पूछ सकते हैं कि कोड दे सकते हैं कि कौन सी एज के बारे में बात कर रहा है. एंड दैट इज योर आयरन और बार्डिक एज, द सोल डिपॉजिटरी ऑफ ऑल नॉलेज ऑफ द एज. देन कम्स द गोल्डन और द होमरिक एज, इन विच पोएट्री अचीव्ड perfection by sympathizing the primitive vitality and power of the Iron Age. Okay, and there was history was discussed, philosophy and science was the stature of poetry decline, and then there was Silver Age. Okay, so remember, with the emergence, this was leading to a very silver age. Okay, so please remember this point. Iron Age were sole depository of all the knowledge of the age, and then there was a Golden Age, which was perfection by synthesizing the primitive vitality and power of the Iron Age, and then with the emergence of history, philosophy, science, the stature of poetry decline, leading to the Silver Age. Okay, then comes the Silver Age. Why? Because history, philosophy, science aane laga, and then Silver Age came. Golden Age kam ho gayi when poetry was no longer supreme but derivative, consisting of good sense and leaning, convert, and and labored and somewhat monotonous harmony of expression. Brass or Nonic Age, and ends in the second childhood of poetry as poetry becomes self-conscious and pseudo-archaic. So ये archaic is मतलब पुराने के बारे में बात, archaic चीज़ों के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं, but it is pseudo, झूठा है, so he's calling that self-conscious and absolutely artificial झूठा poetry. This age refers to the romantic age, which he calls semi-barbarian. Barbarian we mean मतलब jungly, hooligan, uncivilized, and that is what he's saying, that is semi-barbarian. The poet in this age lives in the days that are past. Okay, so he's saying that वो लोग हमेशा past में रहते हैं, they're not talking about the present. His ideas, thoughts, feelings, associations are all with the barbarous manners, absolute customs, and exploded superstitions. So remember what they were writing. They were talking about imagination, Eve of St. Agnes, Keats was writing, Coleridge, Kubla Khan. So he's saying that they're not talking about the practicalities of life. They're not talking about what the age is saying. They're just about their own writing. अपना खुद अपने कमरे में बंद हो जाते हैं और अपनी poetry लिखते हैं. Okay, so that is what he's criticizing. Peacock holds that it's a linear progress in the development of rational knowledge. Okay, so he's saying that rational knowledge nahi develop ho raha hai, it's a very small linear progress. This make unlikely to return to a golden age of poetry, for poetry has less and less of real experience to be concerned with. Okay, so he's saying that poetry is diminishing and diminishing with age. Okay, so we know कि defense of poetry Shelley ने इसको reply किया था Thomas Love Peacock के the 4 ages of poetry को. Okay, let's quickly move to the women writers of the romantic age. वी नो कि बहुत टाइम तक कोई भी वुमेन राइटर्स के बारे में बात ही नहीं करता था. इट इज़ लेटली कि वुमेन राइटर्स भी आने लगे हैं एंड इन द पिक्चर. सो लेट्स सी हु वर द वुमेन राइटर्स ऑफ दैट टाइम. द चिमनी स्वीपर्स कंप्लेंट, दिस वॉज अगेन रिटन ड्यूरिंग द रोमांटिक पीरियड एंड दिस वॉज बाय मैरी एल्कॉक. मैरी एल्कॉक वॉज एन इंग्लिश राइटर who sold public poem. This was the only, I think, public poem that she wrote. बाद में उसने लिखना बंद कर दिया था. And this was published during her lifetime. It was intended to raise money for charity. Okay, the chimney sweepers. We know that the romantic age was also the period of what? Of industrialization. बहुत ही cheap पैसों में बच्चों को ये लोग सैलरी देते थे, बहुत ही कम wages देते थे and बहुत काम कराते थे. And chimney sweepers के बारे में ब्लेक ने बात की है, Wordsworth has talked about, and Robert Browning and Elizabeth Browning have also talked about. And this is it was a very very pitiful sight. बहुत ही pitiful sight है कि imagine young small kids and they are in the chimney and they're cleaning the chimney. Chimney is what? Chimney जहाँ से सारा धुआं जाता है, right? So this is the chimney and imagine young kids are climbing. Of course यहाँ से कोई बड़ा आदमी तो नहीं जा सकते, तो इसी वजह से छोटे बच्चों को employ करते थे ताकि they go up and they clean the chimney and they cover in complete black. Black suit जो उसका होता था. That is a very deplorable sight to even imagine. So Mary Alcock ने इसके बारे में लिखा था and not much is known about Mary's personal life. Even the exact identity of her husband is debated. Anyway, so we do not know much about Mary Alcock, but it is important. Remember this thing that Mary Alcock ने उस टाइम पे the chimney sweepers लिखा था. It is known that Mary was frequently called up to care for others, and as her niece would later write, she dealt with much suffering and trials from Providence. She cared for her parents during a long decline and after Sister Elizabeth died. So just remember this point that he was a nice person, he was very caring, but she has not had a very big literary output, but this work of Mary Alcock is important. Okay, moving ahead. In 1775, she also wrote The Confined Debtor, and that was a fragment from a prison. This poem was published solely to raise money for the people in jail for debt in local prison. Okay, so she was basically a very nice person. She was very caring and she was doing all this for charity. Okay, that poem was also for charity. Another work, that is Confined Debtor, a fragment from a prison. This was also written for charity. The poem was published to raise money for the people living in jail for debt in local prison, and for her efforts, and thanks to her efforts, enough money was raised to release at least 14 people from Newgate prison. So that was a big deal, that she wrote a work and उसका सेल हुआ, 14 लोग वहाँ से free हो गए थे. In 1784, she published another poem, The Air Balloon, a Flying Mortal. Okay, this was anonymous. Rather than publish her poetry, Alcock preferred to share it with friends and family. Okay, she basically इसका literary output इतना ज़्यादा है भी नहीं, because अपने friends और family के साथ share करती, she hardly published. In Bath, she was also known for a philanthropy. Philanthropy is your kindness. Okay. Lamb has also written Chimney Sweepers. You're very right, Sameer. A lot of writers of that time have written Chimney Sweepers. Why? Because it is actually a very deplorable state to imagine that young kids climbing up the chimney and cleaning it all. So philanthropist को बहुत, she was very kind. उसने बहुत ही she used to give a lot to the charity, and this is reflected in her poetry. Okay, and including this poem about the suffering of young children who were employed as apprentice chimney sweeps. Okay, moving ahead. So we know that chimney sweeping was a very tough business, and people were employing. It was incredibly dangerous, and a lot of people have been talked. In 1794, the Gentleman magazine recalled a tragic incident in which 2 young chimney sweepers were killed in the same baker's chimney. The eldest of the 2 was 8 years old. So that was a very deplorable sight, very disturbing to imagine. Okay. ओके, सो रिमेंबर दैट एल्कॉक की जो पोएम था चिमनी द स्टेट ऑफ द चिमनी स्वीप्स यंग अप्रेंटिसेस बाय जोनस हानवे, ये अनदर person that had written was Jonas Hanway. Okay, and in 1788, imagine that all these things were coming in 17, just let me rub this, in 1788 what had come was the Chimneys Act, Sweeper Chimney Act aa gaya tha, thanks to all these people who were writing for these young children. And in 1788 the Chimney Sweepers Act 1788 was passed, which attempted to raise the age limit of chimney sweepers to at least 8 years old. So you can see it was like 5 years kids were also dying and they were cleaning. So this was a very pathetic time where England was basically, yeah, exactly, Pooja, very right. Yeah, Pooja, very right. So now we are coming to another very important point, that is a vindication of the rights of women with strictures on political and moral subjects. We know that Mary Wollstonecraft, which was also mother of Mary Shelley, P.B. Shelley's wife, okay, she wrote this in 1792, one of the most important feminist texts, important one from the perspective that kitna pehle likha gaya tha. In it, Wollstonecraft responds to those educational and political theorists of the 18th century who believed that women should not receive a rational education. Okay, so yahan pe she is basically fighting for the rights of the women, that women should have all those rights jo ke male rights bhi hote hain. She argues that women education ought to match their position in society, and they are essential to the nation because they raise its children and could act as respected companions to their husbands. So here what she is saying, that okay, you know, at that time even to fight, एक ये भी लड़ाई करना है कि औरतों को भी एजुकेशन मिलनी चाहिए, वॉज अ बिग डील. एंड व्हाट इज शी सेइंग दैट उस टाइम पे शी इज़ नॉट सेइंग कि इनको जॉब करनी चाहिए, इनको पैसा कमाना चाहिए, इट इज़ ओके, इनको घर पे रहना चाहिए, लेकिन इनको एजुकेशन मिलनी चाहिए. वाई? बिकॉज दे आर रेजिंग देयर चिल्ड्रन. And it is a saying that, you know, if a woman is taught, the entire family is educated. You know, it is kind of like if a woman is educated, then the entire family is educated. It's a very popular saying, and that is what she's saying, that, you know, it is important because the future of the British of England is being taught by these young women, and hence they should achieve good education so that they can also be companions to their husband, they can be friends to their husbands. Wollstonecraft maintains that women are human beings deserving of the same fundamental rights as men, and that treating them as mere ornaments or property for men undercuts the moral foundation of society. So he's saying that, you know, just to have a good society, just to have a more very important society, women should have the same rights jo ke men can, jo ke such a important and a wonderful thing for anyone to say that to you know, at that time in the 18th century, that, you know, women should have the same rights that men have, and that is what Mary Wollstonecraft is fighting for, a vindication of the rights of women. Okay, it is a very long, it's almost 7,000 words essay that introduces all its major topics in the opening chapters and then repeatedly returns to them, and there are different points here. It also adopts a hybrid tone that combines rational argument with fervent rhetoric of sensibility. So he's giving him reasons, and he's also saying that these are very he's also making it very sensible points. Okay, so Wollstonecraft did not employ the formal argumentation or logical prose style common to the 18th century philosophical writing. So there was no formal way of writing. She has given it in a very hybrid tone, in a very mixed tone, and that combines rational argument with fervent rhetoric of sensibility. Okay, so that is what Mary Wollstonecraft has written. Okay, so coming to the last one for the time, we have 1811. This was a poem written in 1812. It is a poem by Anna Letita Bobald criticizing Britain's participation in the Napoleonic Wars. Okay, इस पोएम में एना ने आर्ग्यू किया है कि अमेरिका बोला है कि अमेरिका आगे आने वाले टाइम में ज़्यादा पावरफुल हो जाएगा, इसके लिए एना को बहुत क्रिटिसाइज़ किया गया था, दैट शी स्टॉप्ड इवन राइटिंग. सो रिमेंबर दिस पॉइंट वेरी वेरी मच, दैट शी आर्ग्यूड दैट द इन्फ्लुएंस ऑफ ग्रेट ब्रिटेन वॉज वेनिंग एंड द इन्फ्लुएंस ऑफ द यूनाइटेड स्टेट वॉज वैक्सिंग. यू नो, सो मीन्स दैट, यू नो, यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स बढ़ रहा था अपने उसमें, एंड यू नो, एंड दिस वॉज एक्चुअली अ वेरी a very profound prophetic poem to write, because उस टाइम पे यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स वाज नथिंग, कुछ भी नहीं था. बाद में जाके इतना पावरफुल हुआ है, लेकिन शी foresee it, she foresaw it, and she knew that this is going to change, and ब्रिटेन की डायनामिक्स चेंज होने वाली, ग्रेट ब्रिटेन डिमिनिश हो जाएगा. एंड वही हुआ. आज यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स इतना पावरफुल है एंड ग्रेट ब्रिटेन का इतना पावर नहीं है. सो इट वॉज टू द यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स दैट ब्रिटेन्स वेल्थ एंड फेम will now go. She contended, and Britain will become nothing but an empty ruin. Okay, so that was a very big thing to say in that time, that that at that time when Britain was doing very well, but इतने wars हो रहा था, Napoleonic wars इतने ज़्यादा हो रहे थे, that she said that अगर ऐसे ही चलता रहा, then England will turn to ruin. Okay, this is an important work, 1811. Okay, poem that was written in 1812 by Anna Letita Borbald. Okay, coming to our questions and answers round, our MCQ for the day. So beginning with, let me see, please, she was a time traveler. Very right, Sameer. Yes, Parminder, that's right. Mary Wollstonecraft was the work, the rights of women was an answer to Thomas Paine's rights of man. Very right. Okay, now we are coming to our first question. So let me see who all will give me the answer. The lyrical ballet, which opens with the poem Rhyme of the Ancient Marina, closes with which poem? Okay, शुरुआत होती है Rhyme of the Ancient Marina में. We know lyrical ballet Wordsworth Coleridge का, जिसमें 1798 में जो कि पहला एडिशन आया था. सेकेंड was in your 1800, जो प्रीफेस लिखा था Wordsworth ने. That opens with the poem Rhyme of the Ancient Marina and closes with which poem? Kubla Khan, Lines Written a Few Miles Above Tintern Abbey, Nutting, or Daffodils? Okay, so Sushmita, Kuhu, Manpreet, Cherry, Parminder, Deepak, Vishal, Kuhu. Very good. The answers that are coming, very right. And the correct answer is Lines Written a Few Miles Above Tintern Abbey. Okay, so please make sure that you note this down. Okay? Okay. Second question we have here. The third person who was with Wordsworth, okay, I'm missing with here. The third person who was with Wordsworth and Coleridge at Quintock Hills when the lyrical ballet was composed was very right, very good. The first is B, second is also, let me see. Okay, very good. Correct answers coming. All right. So, Parminder, Bhavna, Jyotsna, Shweta, Manpreet, Shweta, Deepak, Jyotsna, Parminder, Vishal, Anjali, Bhavna. Everybody is very good. Yeah, that was Dorothy Wordsworth. Okay, so we know that Wordsworth, William Wordsworth, S.T. Coleridge, and Dorothy Wordsworth, जो कि William Wordsworth की बहन थी, they all were together. They all were friends, and they were at Quintock Hills when the lyrical ballet was composed. So if this question also comes, that where were they when the lyrical ballet was composed? They were at Quintock Hills. Okay, remember this. These three people were a party. That was Dorothy Wordsworth, William Wordsworth, Coleridge, and they were at Quintock Hills. Okay, yes, very right. Okay, moving ahead, Coleridge's Kubla Khan was inspired by Samuel Pershaw's Pilgrimage, Voyage, Travels, or none of these. Which work of Samuel? We know कि कुबला खान जो कि इतना ज़्यादा इमेजिनेशन है इस पोएम में, इनकम्प्लीट भी है, वो सैमुअल पर्शा से इंस्पायर्ड थी. एंड तो ये इसके वर्क से किसने लिखा है? पिलग्रिमेज, वॉयज, ट्रैवल्स, और नन ऑफ दीज. Okay, so Anjali is saying B, Pooja is saying A, Deepak is saying B. Travels. Manpreet. All right. Let me see. Let more answers come. Okay. The correct answer here is very right. It is Pilgrimage. Okay. That was the work जिससे Coleridge बहुत ही inspired हुआ था, and he wrote Kubla Khan that was inspired by Samuel Purchas Pilgrimage. Okay, not voyage, not travels, no, not, but this is the correct answer. Okay. Okay, fourth one. Coleridge unfinished dream poem was published in the year 1817, 1818, 1816 or 1819, and this is Kubla Khan that I'm talking about. Kubla Khan. Okay. Kubla Khan, when was it published? Okay, let more answers come in. Remember, this was an unfinished work, and this was the Kubla Khan, and this was inspired by Samuel Purchas Pilgrimage, and it was published in 1816. Okay, so remember this, it's an important date. 1816 mein Kubla Khan was published. It's an unfinished imaginative work, very very wonderful work, and it was inspired by Samuel Purchas Pilgrimage. Okay, moving ahead. Right, Sameer, everybody's right. Yes, Meetu, yes, Shivani, yes, Jyotsna, yes, Sameer. A vision in a dream, a fragment. Absolutely, Shivani, very right. Okay, in which poem of Wordsworth do these lines occur? ये लाइन्स कौन से पोएम में आती हैं वर्ड्सवर्थ के? For often when on my couch I lie, in vacant or in pensive mood, they flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. The daffodils, Tintern Abbey, the Prelude, or the Excursion? Very right, very good. Very good. A lot of you have got this right, and the correct one is the daffodils. These are very beautiful lines, and the daffodils is also, daffodils are very beautiful yellow flowers. Okay, so you can see them. And Wordsworth ने poem तब लिखी जब वो एक field में जा रहा था, and this field was filled with yellow daffodils. Very beautiful sight, and that is what he has spoken about the daffodils. That for often when on my couch I lie, in vacant or in pensive mood, they flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. Okay, so bliss of solitude, bliss of akelapan, that is what he's talking about, the daffodils here, and that is what he is mentioning here. All right, okay. Sixth one. Who said that he had a smack of Hamlet in himself? Okay, किसने बोला था कि उसके अंदर थोड़ा सा Hamlet है? Coleridge, Wordsworth, Charles Lamb, or Thomas D. Quincy? Who said that? Yes, Jyotsna, it's also my favorite poem. One of my very, very favorite poems. The daffodils I love. Okay, good. Let me have more answers for sixth one. Who said that he had a smack of Hamlet? उसको अपने आप को लगता था कि वो थोड़ा सा Hamlet जैसा है. वो कौन था? Okay, very good. And the correct answer here is Coleridge. Yes, Cherry, it's Coleridge. Yes, okay. So S.T. Coleridge used to think that he has a smack of Hamlet because, he was this, Hamlet was also this confused, ambiguous, indecisive, and Coleridge also think that, he's also kind of like that, okay? Okay. Yes, Shweta, yes, Sameer, very right, that's S.T. Coleridge, okay? Okay, moving ahead. Who is the author of Emily, a treatise on education that influenced the Romantic movement? Rousseau, Wordsworth, Coleridge, or Shelley? Who is the author of Emily, a treatise on education that influenced the Romantic movement? Yeah, a smack of Hamlet if I do say so. Yes, Shivani. Yeah, right. Okay, come on, let me know the seventh answer. Kuhu is saying A, Deepak is saying D, Rahul is saying A, Vishal is saying A, Kuhu, Russo, Cherry is A, Shivani is saying Shelley, Farzana is saying A, and the correct answer is Russo. Okay, so please make sure that you are noting this down, that author of Emily, it was a treatise on education, and this was highly influenced by it was written by Rousseau, and it highly influenced the Romantic movement. Okay, so रूसो ने बहुत वर्ड्सवर्थ को बहुत इन्फ्लुएंस किया है, इनफैक्ट सारे रोमांटिक एज के जितने भी पोएट से बहुत इन्फ्लुएंस किया है. सो दिस इज एन इम्पॉर्टेंट question. Please make sure that you know. Okay, Emily, write this down and make a note. Okay, moving on to the 8th question. Who said about Wordsworth, his poetry is the reality, his philosophy is the illusion? Okay, ये Wordsworth के बारे में किसने बोला है? His poetry is the reality, his philosophy is the illusion. Matthew Arnold, T.S. Eliot, F.R. Lewis, or Harold Bloom? Who has said this about Wordsworth? Kuhu, Sameer, Rahul, Shweta, Farzana. Me too. Yes, Russo. Yes, Pooja, you're right about Russo. Okay, so everybody's getting, so 8th. Very good. So a lot of my students know the answer very well, and the correct answer here is Matthew Arnold. He said about Wordsworth, his poetry is the reality and his philosophy is the illusion. Okay, so that is what he's talked about. Wordsworth the Prelude, which was completed in 1805, बहुत ही पहले Prelude complete कर लिया था, बाद में books added हो गई थी. कौन से year में publish हुआ था? 1830, 1840, 1850 और 1860. When was the Prelude, Wordsworth का Prelude का publish हुआ था? This is your 9th question. Very good. A lot of my students know this answer. This is 1850. Okay, we have discussed a lot about the Prelude. Now we are moving ahead. Okay, Wordsworth the Prelude is divided into how many books? 12 books, 11 books, 10 books or 14 books? How many books? Wordsworth का जो Prelude है, जो 1850 में आया था, that was published after the death of Wordsworth, वो कितने books में है? 12 books, 11 books, 10 books or 14 books? Yes, Deepak, you're right. Vishal, Shivani, Cherry, Sameer, Shweta, 1850. Okay, 10th is, all right, Shweta is saying 14 books. Meetu is saying again D. Deepak is saying A, that's 12. Shivani is saying 14 books. Cherry is saying 14 books. Okay. Farzana, Alisha, Kuhu, Very right, very good. Everyone's giving me the right answer. And Wordsworth the Prelude is divided into 14 books. Okay, so please remember this, not 12, not 11, not 10. It's 14 books that Prelude is divided into. Okay. Okay. Moving ahead, who said, I never thought as a child, never had the language of a child? Who said this? Coleridge said, Blake said, Shelley, or Lord Byron? Who said this? Very good, Rahul. First time 10 on 10. Okay, so the correct answer here is Farzana, Coleridge. Let me see who is giving me the right answer for this. I'll wait for 10 seconds more for this. And the correct answer here is again S.T. Coleridge, Samuel Taylor Coleridge. He said, I never thought as a child, never had the language of a child. So please, this is important, remember this one, okay? It is Coleridge. Don't be confused, this is Coleridge, okay? This is Coleridge. Remember this, I never thought as a child, never had the language of a child. This was by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. No, Shweta, not Shelley. Acha, 12, you are saying 12. Okay, see, coming to the 12th one. Frost at Midnight, a meditative poem, was written by whom? Wordsworth, Southey, Coleridge, or Shelley? यस राहुल, मैं स्पेशल क्लास पे अपना रिविजन करा रही हूँ एंड दैट इज़ MCQ एवरी स्पेशल क्लास एवरी डे, सो यू कैन बी देयर. वी आर टेकिंग स्पेशल क्लास पे रिविजन एवरी डे. ओके, all right, so the correct answer, very good, it is S.T. Coleridge, that is Frost at Midnight. That is S.T. Coleridge. All right, this is your Frost at Midnight, a meditative poem that was written by Coleridge, and this is a very, very important one. Okay, so it is 2:30 right now, and also I just want to say that हम लोग के पास अभी और भी questions हैं, and these questions I will be taking on my special class. And today, because I had some minor work, there was an important thing to do, तो मेरी बस आज class is at 3:30 p.m. Okay, 3:30 to 4:30 there is 1 hour class today. आज होगा after 1 hour. Please be there on the Unacademy application का जो है उस पे you will see my name, that is Anamta Rizvi. Okay, so this is my name. So you go on my profile, you can follow me there, and you will see that my class is there from 3:30 to 4:30. I'm taking MCQ. This class is absolutely free. Okay, so please be there. जितने भी questions यहाँ पे बचे, around 8 questions are left there, and you know we have more questions for our MCQ class there. So please be a part of it. MCQ for today, I'm sorry, वैसे तो मेरी close class 3 to 4 होती है, but today I had some very, very important work. That's why my class today is at 3:30 to 4:30 p.m. So please everyone be there. I'll meet everyone after 1 hour. All right? Okay. So please like this video and share with your friends and subscribe subscribe to the channel. And thank you everyone for a wonderful session, for a wonderful class. Thank you for being so participative. Okay, Jyotsna, people are going to like, I'm sure. So students, I request all of you to like the video, and okay, thank you Parminder, thank you everyone. All right, okay. All right, thank you so much everyone. So I will see you there at 3:30 today for the MCQ class. Okay, then thank you Sameer, thank you Farzana, thank you Jyotsna, thank you Parminder, thank you Rahul. Okay, thank you Meetu. See you guys, see you everyone. All right, bye bye.